Hello world, it's Kurtis Potter with Boundless Inspiration. Thank you all for continuing to follow along. I appreciate you and I hope these videos help. Today, I wanted to talk about something that's, it was a struggle for me, and that was changing my pattern, right? Because looking back, a lot of the stuff that I've went through, it was a pattern, it was a cycle, and it happened more than once, right? And that's something that's very hard to break in life, especially if it's a pattern that was passed down to us, that we picked up, that say our parents did, and likely our grandparents and so forth. A lot of patterns can go on for many generations if we're not intentional about dropping those patterns, or picking up new, better patterns, right? So I learned this, and man, I can testify so many times where it was true to my life, where life is 10% what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it, right? And it's not an easy concept to learn and adapt and adopt, but when I'm looking at patterns and the process of trying to change those patterns, the first thing that I always had to do was I had to recognize the pattern. Sometimes this is very hard. It took a lot of looking in the mirror, a lot of self-evaluation, and really a lot of taking constructive criticism from other people. Maybe even if it was a little harsh, or it came at me in the form of anger or resentment or bitterness or pushing me away. We can't see our own backs. So sometimes, when people say things you're doing, it's hard. And there's times where I just wanted to grasp on, be like, no, tit for tat or justify it. But as I get more mature in life, I have to realize that some of that stuff that people have said about me, it had some truth in it. And, I'm grateful for those people in my life that was able to just talk to me as, because they care about me and they loved me, and they cared about our relationship enough to actually communicate and be authentic and talk through it, not talk down to me. So I just thank all those people in my life that's done that, and it helped me grow tremendously. Because if you think about it, and I can testify that I've done this myself, even, probably a majority of the time it was to my wife. We got in this relationship and we're like, you're doing this, you're doing that, you need to change this, you need to change that. And it was so harsh that because we both struggled to just really communicate with each other. And I just take full ownership of how I've been, and looking in the mirror and saying, I had to recognize that pattern in myself. And sometimes it's hard for people to recognize it until they see the effect that it's causing themselves on other people. So the first thing in changing the pattern is just recognizing that. And the second is taking accountability. It was very hard for me, but I had to get to a point where I said, this is my fault that I reacted this type of way. See, my first mentor in life, which, male mentor, it was somebody that was very toxic. And it was through the stages of my life when, I was 14, 15, 16, I don't know if it was quite up to 18, but he used to always say, if you don't like my reactions, don't give me a reason to react. Right? And that was taking zero accountability, and it was justifying my bad actions and poor decisions based on someone else. And that was just a terrible lesson that I was taught, that I picked up and I adopted, versus the video I've watched multiple times since I've seen it by Mike Tyson. And he was speaking to this young man, and the guy was like, I've shut everybody out of my life, and now they're all wanting to be back in my life. Screw them. And Mike said, well, the thing is they have become your master. And he's like, my master? I'm the one that mastered them. What are you talking about? And he said, because when you react differently than you know you should have, or you typically would have in any situation, if they have somehow managed to alter your decisions, then they're your master. And you know what? That was hard for me to realize when I saw that video. And that's why I've watched it so many times, because I realized that me reacting badly when I really didn't want to, I have a heart of gold. I have a massive heart, but me reacting badly in any of those situations just meant that I was making excuses for my action. And that was not really my core value or my true principles. It was my integrity. That was my name. I come into this world with one name and I leave with one name. That's all we come into and we leave with. Sorry about that. And the thing is like, I had to get to a point where I had to take accountability for my actions and stop blaming others. They did this, so I did that. They did this, so I have this pattern. Well, my wife is not this, so why do I have to be? Well, she's not cleaning the house, so why should I clean the house? She's a stay-at-home mom, I work. Well, you know what? There had to get to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm just taking accountability, and maybe she's had a really long day raising 2 toddlers. So I've done a ton of dishes, a ton of laundry, cleaned up the house, vacuumed. There's just times where I had to say, you know what? Let's step up in this relationship and take accountability for that. Even when I struggled with a pornography addiction. See, the thing is when I grew up as a kid, my brother, 4 years older than me, had a stack of pornos in the room. I mean, he probably had like 200. And I remember I was so naive as a kid that I spoke to my stepmom about it one time. I was like, hey, Helena, what are these magazines? Are they okay for me to look at? And she even said, I'd rather you masturbate to a porno or a Playboy or a book versus going out and getting another female pregnant. And see, that was something I learned at like 7 years old. It was something that I took into my adult life, always thinking, hey, you know what? At least I'm not cheating on the girl that I'm with if I'm looking at pornography. That was not the right lesson to learn in life. And see, the thing is I had to stop blaming my brother for showing me those and stop blaming my stepmom for teaching that terrible lesson. And I had to take accountability for my life and go to an SA class, a Sex Addicts Anonymous class, and help me grow tremendously. And I had to seek God throughout that and say, God, take away my lustful thoughts and my lustful eyes, because that is not the way to live, especially in a godly life. And then when you take accountability, I truly believe the best thing to do, especially in the start of your journey and throughout your journey, because it's going to be hard not to pick those back up again at any point. The devil's going to want to get in your mind and get you to pick up that bad pattern again at any point. Usually it's when you're the weakest, when you're going through struggles like relationship problems and so forth, whenever it came to the porn addiction. So I had to get an accountability partner. So you take accountability, then you find somebody that you trust in and get them to be your accountability partner. So for anybody that's struggling with porn addictions, there's this amazing app that you can get on your phone. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to remember the name of it. But there's an app that you can have that actually allows somebody to see all the websites that you're getting on, right? So for instance, my men's group that I was at church with, there's one that brought this up, and the guy that brought it up, I was like, hey man, would you be my accountability partner? It's something that I actually am struggling with, and I don't want to struggle no more. I love my wife tremendously, and you know what? I don't want this bad habit or addiction that I picked up in my life, this bad pattern that I picked up from a young age, 7 years old, and I've been dealing with for like 19 years, I think is when I started to address this, maybe even 20 years actually. We're thinking about it. 23 years I dealt with that. It's something just in the last couple of years that I started working on as I got closer to God. And he said, yeah, man, I'll be your accountability partner. I went, the app costs, I think, $15 a month, which is nothing. I downloaded it. And then when it said, who do you want to be your accountability partner? I thought about it, and see what that guy said is, you know what, if I get a notification, I'm not going to talk down on you. I'm not going to belittle you. I'm not going to, we're going to talk about it, and we'll get through it, and I'm going to help you not make that decision again, and I'm going to forgive you. And I was like, you know what? That's like the word try. He was saying, we're going to try to defeat this, right? And I was like, that's not good enough. So what I did instead was I put my wife down as my accountability partner, sent her the notification instantly. And I just talked to her and I said, hey, there's this app that I found where you can monitor every single website on my phone and on my laptop. The thing is I had came to a place where I had enough. I was truly over that pattern. So I was like, you know what? If this sends it to this guy, he's just going to excuse it. Yeah, we're going to talk about it. But really, what kind of true ownership? That's only like a partial ownership. That's not a full ownership. But if I send it to my wife, you know what that caused? And I knew it'd cause that is every time I even thought about getting on some kind of bad site, I knew she was going to be the one that was seeing it. Not just God above was going to be seeing it, but my wife would be seeing it. And then I was like, nope, not going to do it. So the biggest part, beauty in that was it really helped me break that cycle. And then God helped me and some of the guys at church to where I just thought of it differently. So I had the third thing in changing the pattern is you have to learn the lesson out of that pattern. Not only the pain that it caused in my wife when she found out I had that addiction and I told her about it, because it caused a lot of pain in her heart. For me, I thought it was better than cheating, but to her, she felt like I was cheating and she was justified in feeling that type of way, right? So then I had to learn that lesson was if I do this, then it breaks my wife's heart. If I do this, it breaks God's heart. If I do this, it is me becoming a master of an addiction. I mean, the addiction was mastering me, right? If I do this, it means that I'm weak-minded and I can't control my actions, which I could have. I was just choosing not to, right? So when it comes to a pattern, I had to take that full accountability and say enough is enough. I'm changing that. So anytime I walked up to any kind of female and the devil puts those kind of thoughts in your mind, then I just say, no, you know what? I love my wife more than anything on this earth. That is somebody's wife. That is somebody's daughter. That's God's daughter. That's somebody else's. And that's not mine to even to look at or flirt with or entertain or anything like that. My wife is the one that I want to be with for the rest of my life. She is amazing. She is beautiful. She is worthy of me not making that choice, and not only making that choice, but stopping it in its tracks. Because even the Bible, it says you'll have that first thought. And a lot of times you can't help that first thought. A lot of times it's the devil putting in your mind, but it's the second thought. If you see somebody walk by and you're like, oh my gosh, they're gorgeous or whatever. It's that, hey, turning back again to stare at their butt as they walk by or something like that. It's having those bad thoughts that come after it versus saying, you know what, I'm walking this way. I'm going to walk towards God. And even if I'm struggling, I'm going to get down on my knee and say, God, you know what? Take this, because that is not the thoughts that I want to have anymore. And there's days where I have to pick that up again and again and again and just get closer to God. So for you, changing that pattern, it has to be a choice. So the fourth thing on changing a pattern is it's making a different choice. So you recognize it, you take accountability and get an accountability partner, you extract the lesson from it, what lessons you learn from it, you make a different choice. And for what? Sometimes you gotta find your why. Why are you making a choice? You can't just be like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to make a choice because I don't like this anymore. For me, it was, I had to make a different choice because I did not want to lose my wife. the woman that I love greatly, I did not want to pass that sin down to my children, to where I'm saying, hey, son, you know what? I'd rather you masturbate to a porno versus getting a woman pregnant. No, I'm making a choice that this is a generational break that I'm going to break. No more bondage in my family. And you know what? It was a lesson that I was learned, a toxic lesson. But you know what? I'm going to break that bad habit because we're human and we have the right to make choices in our lives. And becoming the best version of myself, becoming boundless, I had to recognize that that was one of the things that had binded me in life. And just like, you know, drugs and alcohol being a coping mechanism, so was porn. You know what? Instead of, hey, me and my wife are arguing, instead of taking ownership and learning how to communicate through that authentically and just being open and giving her trust, that was how I was breaking trust. And that was how I wasn't taking ownership. And I was just resorting back to that because it was just a coping mechanism, right? So now these are the 5 good steps on breaking patterns. But one thing that I also learned in this journey, of changing your life, you can't just. I looked at myself almost like as a machine, like change this, get better at that, do this better, not beat your head against the wall, be better, be better, be better, be better, right? Like, I really wanted to be better. I was tired of hurting. I was tired of hurting other people. But see, when I would fail, I would get so down on myself. Like, Kurtis, you know better. Change that pattern, right? You're a machine. You're a robot. No, I'm not perfect. I'll never be perfect. I'm not better than anybody. I've struggled with a lot of the same struggles everyone else watching this video has struggled with. But what I learned was you have to start celebrating the times that you did change that pattern, right? So those times when I wanted to look at pornography, I wanted to smoke some weed to get through a hard time, I wanted to go to the bar and have a drink to get through a hard time, when my wife and I wasn't getting along, just to use those. See, that's what we did a lot of times. We get mad at each other. We get in a fight. Next thing you know, her or I'd be rolling a joint. And then one thing, it's like sometimes when you're doing the wrong thing, it's like, let's get somebody else to do the wrong thing with us so we can justify our actions, right? So one of us would roll it up and we'd be hitting it. And then next thing you know, we're still mad, blah, 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 talking to each other. Like, here, you want to hit this? Sometimes I'd say no, but most times I'd be like, you know what? Yeah, give it to me. So what did that do? We didn't talk through what it was. A lot of times it was tit for tat. She'd be like, you did this. And I'd be like, you did that. We'd just be going back and forth. It was such a toxic pattern that we learned from our parents. And then we would smoke. And then next thing you know, you get clouded in your mind. Like, that's what weed does. Is just like, we'd be like, man, screw it. No big deal. You get high and you get the giggles. So next thing you know, I do something stupid and she starts laughing. Sometimes we'd even take it to the next level and, hey, let's drink. I'd be so frustrated. I'm pouring a shot. You want a shot? Yeah, I'm taking a shot with you. So now we've numbed our minds with that marijuana. We've taken that alcohol and just numbed our body, which kind of gets your blood flowing, if you know what I mean. So then next thing you know, it's like we've completely forgot what we was even fighting about. We're intoxicated and high, and a lot of times it would be really me, because I was real sexual, that came from being molested, learning that at a young age, and then having addiction and porn problems. Like, that's one of my go-tos was sex. And I also, I guess, subconsciously found that was the best way to just get over a situation. And see, where it came from was I dated a girl that she was the same way. We'd get in a fight, and next thing you know, she'd be just getting me naked. And I'm like, I'd be still mad at her. See, we weren't to where we just go straight to weed and alcohol. She would just go straight to sex. She was a true sex addict. And I'd I'd be mad, but then next thing you know, I'm getting laid or getting a blowjob, and I'm like, cool, I guess. And then next thing you know, I'd completely forget why I was even mad at her because I'm getting laid. And finally, one day I asked her, I was like, why do you do this? Like, we were just yelling at each other 60 seconds ago, and you just start taking off your clothes or rubbing on me. And it's like, yeah, I can't think about, hey, what we're even mad at anymore. And she was like, well, that's just my way of showing you that, you know what, I'm past it. I'm over it. Let's move forward. And what better way than, feel amazing. And I was like, yeah, you know what? That's a good principle. And I took it into my current relationship with my wife. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, we fought. But you know what? Now it's like, let's get past it and let's make love. And then we're past it, right? But see, the problem was it was like a snowball. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And when we never talked through those pains, it just created more resentment. See, when you bury that pattern of burying whatever it is that you're doing inside and not getting help working through it, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we get in a fight and some stuff would get brought up that we never talked through. See, I've asked my wife multiple times, you know what? It says in the Bible not to go to bed angry. And I'm like, wife, let's talk through this. She'd be like, nope, turn her back to me, roll over, put the covers on. And see, she's somebody that can just, she's out, going to sleep. And I'd be over there stewing like, wife, we go to church. And you're like, amen, Jesus, screaming out loud. We're both going to church. And I'm like, it says in the Bible, let's talk through this. So for her go-to wasn't, hey, let's have sex and get over this. She was just like, hey, I'm going to sleep because my body allows me to pass out immediately. I can't even watch 30 minutes of a movie without passing out. And she'd just wake up like, hey, it's a new day. Let's just go on. Well, that was almost just as toxic in our patterns of not talking through things, communicating through things, and getting through things to be able to actually come to some kind of resolution and us both taking ownership like, you know what? Yeah, that was not right of me. I'm sorry. How can we change this pattern so we don't continue this cycle, right? So those were some bad things, but now I've learned to celebrate any time that I don't do that. Anytime that, you know what? Yeah. Sometimes, guys, we think with this mind. Sometimes we think with our other mind. So the times when I just cuddled my wife, we got in some kind of argument, and I just tried to talk to her through it. And then I just held her and told her how much she meant to me, and didn't have that ulterior motive of, hey, I'm going to get her undressed, because that's really where I always, my go-to on coping with things. You know what? I have to celebrate those moments that I didn't resort to that I didn't let my mind defeat me, that I said, Kurtis, you've got a bad pattern that needs broken. And how can you make a different decision in order to have a different outcome? The biggest thing in these changed behaviors, patterns, is if you change the pattern, you change the outcome. Just like if you're making a cake almost. You leave out a different ingredient or you add a different ingredient that you don't normally, it changes the outcome. So if you have went through those steps of recognizing the pattern, taking accountability, getting an accountability partner, checking your emotions, like what emotional effects is this causing, not only in my life, but others' lives, including your children's, because you're going to pass that down to them. You figure out the lesson and then you make a different choice. Like, celebrate it, because you change the pattern, the outcome is going to be different and your life starts to get better. See, the thing is whenever I was actually open and honest and just saying, babe, you know what, I'm struggling today to have these lustful thoughts where I want to resort to pornography. But in all reality, I just want to make love to you. You're gorgeous. You're beautiful. I love your body. You're an amazing woman. You're an amazing mom. And we are the closest, like, sensually when we're making love. And I just want to make love to you and give my body to you. You know what? That's a moment of a changed pattern. You know, when she gets mad and rolls one of those joints, I say, hey, babe, no, I don't want to smoke that joint with you. I don't judge you. I understand you because I've made that same bad pattern many of times myself. Even before I got with you, I made those same patterns, but it didn't do anything beneficial for our lives when we just buried it and we just coped with it. So, hey, how about let's sit down once the kids go to sleep and let's authentically, without attacking each other, let's authentically talk through this and get through this, because I want to be married with you for the rest of my life. And I don't want it to just be some average bounded marriage. I want it to be an amazing marriage that people look at and they envy. They're like, man, I want a marriage like that. Hey, wife, Brooke, I want our marriage to be a marriage that our son and daughter looks at us and says, man, Dad, you are so in love with Mom. Hey, Mom, you're so in love with Dad. What is the benefits of changing these patterns? Man, it's an amazing marriage. It's an amazing relationship with anybody you're in, your kids, your friends, your coworkers. Looking that man or woman in the mirror and taking ownership on the patterns that you have, the bad patterns, and saying, you know what? It's easy for us to see bad patterns in other people. So when you see a bad pattern in somebody, you say, do I have any portion of that same bad pattern? Have that confidence and that awareness to be able to say, hey, I'm going to take ownership in that. Instead of judging them, I'm going to go ahead and take ownership and get control of my life. Because at the end of the day, I'm the only one that I can control is myself. Even our toddlers, we try to control them at times, like, Zion, don't do that. And he'll do it like, man, if you all have kids, you understand. And see, some of the biggest benefits to this, like, okay, why should I change a pattern? You're going to get confidence. You're not going to feel shame. Because I know for anyone that actually has a conscience, when we mess up and we have some kind of bad pattern, regardless if it's not anger or sexual sin or drug or alcohol sins or, lustful, you may have a bad pattern of spending money. You may have a bad pattern of snapping on your kids or your animals or your spouse or your friends. You may have a bad pattern of procrastination, or like me, there's times where I had a pattern of eating really unhealthy. I love some food. Man, I'm a foodie. I'm a food junkie. I love good food. One of my favorite foods is deep fried Oreos, mint chocolate chip ice cream. My wife and I, we can eat a whole tub of cookie dough without ever cooking a cookie. It never goes in the oven, just spoonfuls. You go in the fridge at the end of the night. We're about to pour milk in the bottle for our daughter. Ooh, there's the tub of cookie dough. Take a spoonful, chug that milk right before bed. It craps in my teeth, so it's eating away my teeth. It's going to my gut, which caused a dad bod. Some of the patterns was just being like, you know what? I am getting mastered by bad food. Like, what? I'm allowing food to master me. My phone. Man, we're in this technology era where you see people walking. They got their eyes glued to their phone and they're not even paying attention to anything. Texting and driving, getting in wrecks. Walking and texting and getting in accidents. People falling in manholes. I've seen videos of people falling in fountains at malls. I've seen different videos of kids and how bad they feel by their parents always being glued to their phone. Man, last night I noticed it. I had 2 conference calls. The one lasted an hour and 48 minutes. And by the end of it, my son was like, "Dad, please just come play Legos with me." And I felt so bad because I had allowed that conference call to get scheduled when I should have been being present as a father. And I regretted that pattern of allowing conference calls to be scheduled in my father-kid time. And I was trying to get off the phone, and I was really trying to rush the conference call. It lasted an hour and 48 minutes. I didn't even realize it was going to last that long. And that's when I had made that bad pattern of not being realistic enough to saying, hey, this specific conference call, it could last a long time. See, what I didn't realize was the person that I was having the conference call in brought someone else in the conference call. So it was not me just having a conversation with one person, it was 2. And I had to realize that was a pattern that I had made in my life, to where I didn't look at all the variables and possibilities of that. So I scheduled it in the time with my kids. And then bam, next thing you know, I had marriage counseling, 8 o'clock. So then I finally, at the one conference call, I was like, "Hey guys, I'm sorry. We've been through everything I feel like we need. I got to get off here and spend at least 20 completely present minutes with my kiddos, because that pattern of mine, I just robbed them of time with their father." I was on the conference call while I was making dinner and eating dinner with them, and the people understood it, and I warned them of it. But hey, I got to be with my kids. And then I had to kiss them, put them in the tub. Then I was on to the next conference call, or it was actually a marriage counseling, which I was grateful that I did. But then 30 minutes later, my kids are like, "Dad, Mom, get us out of the bathtub." And we did. And the amazing thing was our kids got to be with us in our marriage counseling session. And it was an amazing thing, because the marriage counselors were able to see our kids and was like, "Hey, this is what you guys are fighting for. You're breaking these cycles for them, so you don't pass that down to them." And I was grateful. But I also had to realize, hey, you know what? That's another time, another cycle I'm the one that scheduled that. But I scheduled it, last week, and didn't think about scheduling the second one. So then it's like, man, I just robbed my kids 3 hours of just legit present time. So that was one pattern, was I allowed my phone again to rob me and my kids of those 3 hours, when I typically tell people, hey, from 5 to 9, nope, don't call me. If my friends need me, you could call me. And I'm getting better at that. See, so that's where I just went through the steps of, I took ownership. I realized it was a bad pattern. I took ownership and accountability that I caused that. The emotion it had on me was the regret and the shame and the guilt. I'm using you all as an accountability partner in this video, and I'm speaking about it, and I'm making a different choice. So I've been doing good at this lately, but I'll tell you what, again, I'm going to pick that back up again and say, hey, don't do that again. Because the more times that happens, the more it just breaks down my kids. So is one of my toxic patterns the phone? Yep. And I'm having to be intentional. I'm going to have to look myself in the mirror and say, Kurtis, this is a tool, but it's also a distraction. And you got to utilize it and manage it, or it's your master. So folks, I just ask you today, is there anything in your life that is a pattern that you know you need to change, that you want to change? I just invite you to get to a point where you say, you know what, enough is enough. This may not be a really, really, really bad pattern, But see, a lot of those patterns just started off small and they trickle effect. They got bigger and bigger and bigger. And you know what? It may be to me like, oh, my phone, no big deal. I see a lot of parents that they're like, for what? I don't, my kid, they got a phone too. They can play with their phone. But just that feeling, and I could see it in my son, Dad, play with me. That feeling in my wife, that hurt when I was finally opened up to her about my pornography addiction, that hurt. No matter what you're doing, it's always causing a feeling in somebody else. It may not be immediate. It wasn't causing any kind of effect on her when she didn't know about it. But in all reality, it did. Because there were nights where I was just like, man, I'm always the one pursuing my wife. She was not the type of girl that gets me undressed, so I'm always the one pursuing her for the last 6 years. And there'd be nights where I'd be like, man, I wish she would just pursue me. And I'm like, you know what? She's going to fall asleep in 10 minutes anyways. I'm just going to let her fall asleep, masturbate for a couple minutes and be done, and then go on my night. And then I've got my fix. She's asleep, so she's getting more rest. She didn't obviously care enough to pursue me, so it wasn't that big of a desire to her. I just justified it. So even though when she didn't know about it, what was it doing to our marriage and our relationship? It was another non-intimate moment where I was chasing my wife. Regardless, if I wanted to put myself in that victim mentality, okay, so what? I've had to chase my wife when it comes to getting into bed throughout the whole 6 years. Well, that's not her. But every time that I did it, we had that intimate moment of making love and getting close to each other and giving our bodies to each other. So what? What, my pride and ego wouldn't allow me to chase my wife? Like, oh, we're out of that honeymoon stage. I'm not going to chase my wife anymore. Well, that's how relationships end, folks. When we stop chasing the one that we love, that we say on that altar, hey, whatever, I'm going to marry you and I'm going to be with you for better or for worse, for richer or poor, through thick, through thin, for the end of my life. Like, at what point do I say, okay, well, I'm done opening doors for her. I'm done buying flowers for her. I'm done chasing her in bed. I'm done rubbing her feet, massaging her back, sending her out on girl time. You know what? There's been plenty of times I was like, Brooke, I could just tell you need some time. You've been going through a lot. We've got toddlers. We've got a lot going on. Hey, why don't you just see if you can go out with the girls this Saturday night? At what point do we stop doing those great patterns and pick up these bad patterns, the justifications, the excuses, the procrastination, the bad spending habits, the bad eating habits, just the toxic, angry habits, snapping, reacting, bullshitting, just when is enough enough? Even if they're little. I heard our pastor say he doesn't think that people should drink at all. And you could hear some of the people in the church grumbling like, a couple beers, no big deal. Jesus drank wine. He said, you know how many people I've had to counsel that became alcoholics and lost everything because of they started with one drink? They always say, hey, it just started with one. And then next thing you know, I was drinking a 6-pack. And then next thing you know, I was drinking a 6-pack of the Tall Boys. And the next thing you know, I found out that I really like whiskey or vodka or tequila to kill you. It just started off with one. Just started off with me looking at the one magazine. And then I was over it. So then I was having to look at different magazines. And then they come out with this phone where you can look at it for free. And then it was at my fingertips. And then next thing you know, I was walking by and undressing females with my mind. And then you get on social media and you have these people coming out to you like, hey, I know you're married, but, and you know what? I'm just grateful that I never went out and cheated on my wife. But in all reality, with that porn addiction, it was cheating on her the whole time. And whenever you have these toxic patterns, you're cheating on yourself, right? You're cheating yourself out of life. You're cheating yourself out of happiness. You're cheating yourself because it's your master. Today, I invite you to look at anywhere in your life, any pattern in your life, looking at the mirror, taking full ownership and being intentional on creating the best version of yourself so you can have the best possible life you can. I don't care if you're 60 years old, you could still have 40 years left. If you get your eating right, your health right, exercising, you're eating the right nutrients, vitamins, minerals, and stuff that you need. And again, exercising daily, getting your mind in check. Stress can kill you. It can create ulcers. It can destroy you just as much. And that's why I say everybody could use counseling. No, you might be a great person. There might just be one little thing that you didn't realize you was doing. You may be super successful and running a good business and your marriage is awesome. But there's actually one little thing that really gets under your wife's skin, but she's just really good at managing and saying, you know what, he's a really good dude and he's just got this one little flaw. You may be a business owner and your business may be doing well. It may be doing great. But if you went and got help, seek some counseling, some mentorship, workshops, seminars, you may get this one little big thing that blows up your business. You may have a multi-million-dollar business, but in all reality, your employees are walking around, they really hate you. And you dangle the carrot. Hey, you can make this money or I can fire you, right? I've had some managers, especially like Angie's List. Man, there was a couple managers, they were the top of the top and made the most money. But the thing is all their employees, even including myself, it was like we were scared of them. They would, hey, this money, they'd incentivize us with the money. Or, hey, if you don't hit your numbers, you're getting fired. But you know what? I saw another manager that was doing amazing, and it was because she empathized with her employees. She tried to understand them, and she incentivized them by building them up and bringing out their great habits instead of tearing them down. And those are the two types of different managers, the ones that they manage with an iron fist. Yeah, you can get stuff done, but also the great managers are the ones that manage with the heart and understanding. And they build up a team. That's what leaders do, is they build up other leaders. So see, when you go through this pattern change, like I'm doing right now, this is my version of helping others get through patterns, because I've realized the bad patterns and the bad effects that they had on my life. I hope this helped you. I hope this helps change your mind and understanding of, you know what? We're human. We have bad patterns, and it's okay. It was not necessarily our fault. Like in that Will Smith video, it wasn't necessarily our fault that we adapted these patterns. They were taught to us. But it's our responsibility to change these patterns. I love you all. If this, hit you anywhere inside, please like, share, comment. Even if it didn't, there may be somebody in your timeline, your social media that needs to hear a message on changing patterns and becoming a master of your patterns instead of letting it master you. That's what like, share, commenting will do. It'll help others see this, and this could truly just help, because this is one of the biggest things in my life that I'm so grateful that I took the ownership and understanding that the patterns that I'm causing, and that I have the control to change them. You have the control to change your patterns as well, no matter what they are. Today's a new day. It's a new opportunity to make a choice and go in a different direction. And even if you struggle and almost pick it up, or you do pick it up again, hey, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I'm human. Let's move forward. Celebrate every single time you don't pick up that bad habit or that bad pattern. Celebrate every single time. You are worthy. You matter. Your life matters. Your happiness matters. Your joy matters. Let's all work together on achieving that. Because every single day, we're born boundless, and every single day we're just getting a step closer to being boundless. I love you all. Have a great day.